and I'm your host Iqbal. And I hope all our listeners out there, you're doing well and everyone's good and happy. Listening in Sheffield, Rotherham, Luton, and Nottingham, and anyone listening online on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, on TuneIn app, or any other devices, or any other kind of ways that you might be listening in. I hope everyone is well. And in the studio, I got Brother Mansoor. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mansoor.
Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum, listeners. Hope everybody's well. I'd like to send some love to my nephew in Hoods and his family who are dealing with a recent tragedy, grief, and everybody make dua, please.
Yeah. Inshallah, Allah SWT give your nephew and his family the patience, sabr, and forbearance to go through at this time of very difficult. I think life is a trials and tribulations. Everyone has the it's one. I was just thinking, if you speak to anybody, everyone will tell you that they are going through some kind of hardship, whether to that individual it's a big thing, but to them itself it could be a major thing.
SubhanAllah.
And it's funny, not in the sense funny in the sense like the funny in the sense like it's like sometimes we look at other people's problem and we're thinking I wish I had that because that would be more bearable.
Yeah, SubhanAllah, that's true.
Then something like what I'm going through kind of thing. But at the same time, we should think that Allah SWT puts us through trials and tribulations based on what we can handle, and we should always be grateful because of the blessing we have. That's something as well. It's important to look as well. And all the time we forget that the blessing we have, the good we have. So anyway, but at the same time, I think we're all humans. We all have human emotions and feelings, and so we just need to be patient as much as we can.
Exactly.
In the studio, I got Brother Hashimi joining me as well. Assalamualaikum, Brother Hashimi, how you been?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, really good.
That's good, mashallah. To our listeners out there, studio hotline is 01142425200. That's Sheffield 2425 or you can send a message or WhatsApp on 07888559986. That's 07888559986. And you can go on Facebook, Twitter, and I think on online as well. If you're listening to TuneIn app as well, you can also post any messages, questions, or comments on that as well. Inshallah, tonight's topic we're going to be discussing is I think it's quite thingy as well. We're going to be discussing about in terms of Islamic identity, or how people perceive Islam, or how they feel connected to Islam, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those topics. What defines us?
Yeah.
And what identifies us with Islam?
So, just for our listeners out there, I just want you to sort of just ponder yourself in terms of your connection with Islam. And by that, what I mean is, I don't mean like, we're not talking about going theological side, We're talking about how you see yourself. If somebody says to you, how would you define Islam? We're not talking about theological Islam. We're not talking about belief system. We're not talking about from the Aqidah point of view. We don't want to go into too much into sort of fiqh or something like that. We're just talking about this general, broad sense.
I would say it's a very subjective question here.
Yeah.
Because if you ask 100 people, they'll give you 100 different answers.
Hopefully that's what I want. Because sometimes we sometimes we just generalize, or sometimes we just we forget that people are different.
Yeah.
How they identify themselves.
I mean, it could even be somebody might say to you, a particular type of cap, because sometimes people wear certain caps, certain colours to identify them with a certain sheikh.
Yeah.
So it could even be something like that.
No, that's true. That to be honest with you, because the reason why I thought of this topic is because, alhamdulillah, in my sort of wide thingy of daily life, I come across so many people, friends, families, colleagues, and all sorts of people. And sometimes people, when they talk about religion, they're looking at sort of in a very sort of their own way kind of thing, through their own sort of looking glass, if you know, kind of thing.
Their own interpretation.
Their own interpretations and how they perceive it. Sometimes it's fine, nothing wrong with it. But other time, you know, what we see, sometimes it becomes a case of, if you're not my way, then
it's the highway.
It's the highway kind of thing. So that's where we're heading, you know. So, but before we go on that, I think one of the things what I want to say is, if you look at Islam nowadays, or just the Muslims, you know, if we just look at the state of Muslims in this day and age, and if we just take Sheffield as an example, I mean, I think it's a great thing that if you see, like, for instance, we have, alhamdulillah, so many different massages, and most massages, they are full on a Friday. Today's a Friday, you know, it's Friday evening. Well, Islamically it's Saturday, but for the sake of arguments, we just call it Friday. You know, you go to any masjid on a Friday afternoon for Jumu'ah, it's pretty much full. You know, sometimes it's overfull. Sometimes, you know, there is, you know, you can see clearly there's a demand to extend or have bigger masjid or more masjid, basically. And Sheffield alone, I mean, I don't know how many masjids there are. I've not done any count, but I know in Darnell, for instance, there's about 12 something like masjids, 12 or something masjid, I think. 8 or 12, I think. It's about 12, I think. No, about 12.
I think Sheffield's reaching close to 30 masjids.
30 masjids.
Easily.
And these are masjids that we know. Plus, there are other small places as well, you find, because then you come across where, like, for instance, universities and colleges and schools and places like that where there's
a
hospital and various other places, workplaces, you know, where Muslims are making, you know, they have rooms to pray Jummah Salah.
So you should be very grateful for this. I mean, we've got such a diverse community out there. The Somalian community, the Bangladeshi community, the Indian community, the Pakistan community, and different communities have their own mosques as well. I mean, different schools of thought, and everybody's got a right to practice the way they want to.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, that's the thing. That's the
beauty. That's a beautiful thing.
The other thing, like, for instance, I was recently, a few weeks ago, I attended this, like, a sort of Sheffield language, sort of like an anniversary celebration thing, and they had people of different sort of nationalities celebrating their culture and language, and there was Kurdish community as well, you know, celebrating their heritage and their language as well, and they identify themselves as Muslims, which they are Muslim, and we forget there are a large Kurdish community in Sheffield as well, and you have Turkish, and as the brother mentioned, you know, you have Yemeni, you have Eritrean as well, and you have Europeans. I mean, recently I've been told that, you know, from, like, places like Bosnian and Kosovo and Romanian and even Russian. I mean, today I was told about a couple of Russian students who attend local madrasa, I know.
Mashallah.
Some of the children, and apparently they're Russian. So I was like, whoa, mashallah. So you can see, I think, if you look at it from sort of within our sort of social environment, Muslims are in a good positions. They are doing well. We have so many madrasas. We have Muslims in a lot of hierarchy positions as well. We have Muslims who's the mayor of London. We have Muslims who are MPs and lords and baronesses and all sorts as well. We have Muslims who are businessmen, businesswomen as well.
I mean, Muslims can be found across all different sectors, all echelons of society. Alhamdulillah.
And if you look at, I think you mentioned the NHS doctors especially, I think you find, you walk into any hospital, you cannot walk without coming across a Muslim doctor or a Muslim nurse or something like that.
Especially in A&E.
A&E, yeah. If you go to A&E, and I mean, I have a couple of friends who are doctors, mashallah, and they're surgeons, and they're working in A&E. So, you know, if you look at all that, and then you look at, if you're going to schools and, you know, any kind of professional businesses and stuff like that as well, there are Muslims.
Mashallah, it's a beautiful sight. If you were driving I'd go for more end of school day, and how many young children you're seeing, and easy identifiable young girls with hijabs on. And they see them everywhere, mashallah.
Yeah, and mashallah, and that's something else you mentioned as well. I think in somewhere like in Sheffield, we are able to practice our religion quite freely and quite openly as well. In terms of dress-wise, color-wise, I'm talking about attire, and I'm not talking about skin. That's something that you're born with, you can't change that. In terms of the style of clothes you wear as well.
Mashallah.
And the other thing I think we are blessed with, I was talking to some people as well, is food as well, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, we have
good access to halal food, meat shops, you know, butchers and all that, and restaurants and places like that to go and eat. So all in all, I think we are, mashallah, if you really think about it, we can't really complain, can we?
Sheffield's quite good, alhamdulillah.
And it's interesting because, and then we have converts as well, which is, I think Sheffield is, I remember a couple of years ago I read that Sheffield was I think had the most number of converts in UK or something like that, per population or something. It's got a very high percentage of converts from, or reverse, however way you want to define them, from Afro-Caribbean or from sort of Caucasian white kind of thing.
Yeah, I think somebody took Shahada in Nur Hadi this week.
Did they?
Yeah, I think I heard Imam Yusuf mention on Thursday night. SubhanAllah, that's a beautiful thing.
MashaAllah. And then you have, from what I understand, I think there's for every male convert or revert, there's about 2 or 3 females. So I think the conversion to Islam higher in percentage more towards female, of a female side than males, to be honest with you.
I mean, I think one of the reasons for that is that females tend to reflect a lot more. They tend to be more think deeper. So that's probably one of the reasons why you have more female converts or stroke reverts than male.
Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned. So what we see, right? If you open up your eyes, kind of thing, if you just start looking, if you just suddenly open, you see, whoa, there's so many people. Like a lot of the time, you find some people live in a very close sort of community, or in a very sort of narrow-minded perspective kind of thing. They see like just they're sort of very limited kind of thing. It's people who are practicing religion or culture their way. They don't want to intermingle.
For such people, like take it or leave it. I mean, they've got a very narrow perspective. For them, these are the defining features of a Muslim. And if you do not conform to this, you're a non-Muslim. So it could be anything. It could be as like even a type of attire or type of clothes that you wear. So you have many different people out there with all different perspectives.
That's
with their own definitions of what a Muslim is.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's inherited ignorance and unable to articulate anymore or information, and they're just stuck in the, how can you say it? How would you say this? They're stuck in the wrong ways, which are old ways.
They're stuck in one of my teachers, he mentioned, like stuck in a fish tank, basically.
Yeah, that helps.
They're stuck in a fish tank, and the glass has been removed, but they're still within the parameter, within the sphere, basically.
They don't know how to get out.
Because they've created their own boundaries, and they can't get out to those boundaries. Just going back to the sisters, another thing about the sisters is women generally tend to read a lot more. So they investigate a lot more. So in terms, there's another thing, reading books and finding proofs for Islam. Yeah. So it's something that I think one of the reasons probably why you get a lot more female converts than male converts.
It's ironic because if you look at the stereotype towards Muslim, basically they sort of define like sort of female, like when it comes to knowledge or education, we restrict women kind of thing. They're not allowed to sort of study or read books and something like that. And it's how it's quite interesting how stereotype image that's portrayed by people, portrayed by media, portrayed by politicians is contrary to the real thing.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's what you just said. In certain parts of Pakistan, that's a prevalent kind of mentality. So if you've got daughters, they'll send them to school for 4 or 5 levels or classes or whatever years, and until they can read and write. And as long as she can read and write, and she can, if she gets a letter from her husband or something, or that level, and she can read the Quran, and they will say that's it, that's enough. And then then she'll be at home doing house chores until she gets married. In certain places, like in Fata region, where Pakhtun areas, that might be after 16, 17 years of age, she'll be married off. And very few women actually get to the age of 20, 21. So these are certain areas in Pakistan. Unfortunately, this kind of
you can see
it's still, this kind of attitude is still prevalent.
You can see how the culture and history and heritage defines the people.
Yeah.
And so that defines the religion itself as well. Without going too much into belief, I'm talking about the sort of the practical aspect of religion that people are living. You know, for instance, so some people see like knowledge should be restricted, or it should, you know, people should get married at an early age, or they see Islam is a thing of identity, or is it a thing of internal sort of belief, or is it sort of something more of a practical, you know? And you know, from what I've seen, you know, when you come across people, when you travel the world, you meet Muslims of different type, and they all identify themselves as Muslim first and foremost in a simplistic form, but their identity is very different, their practice is very different, the perception of the deen is very different. For somebody, something is very important, which might not be to you or to me, but to us, something else might be important, might not be important to them. Now, for instance, if you're from the Indian subcontinent, for us, the way we sort of define a person who's of a piety, or someone who's of very sort of knowledgeable, or someone who's worthy to be called a leader, that person has to have, i.e., beard, long beard as well. You know, that person has to have like a turban, you know, like wearing a hat and a turban kind of thing. That person has to be wearing a salwar kameez or jubba kind of thing. That's how we define it.
So it could be quite superficial, so where you look.
Yeah.
As long as you're wearing a turban and you've got a long beard and you're wearing a salwar kameez, and you could be defined as somebody being religious.
No, I'm saying that's a general thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you go somewhere like Morocco or something like that, or Turkey or something like that, for them, you know, that is completely oblivious. I think that, you know, for them, beard and turban or hat and jubba, something like that, doesn't come into the equation. You could meet a guy with a shirt and tie who looks like a normal office worker to us, but if you speak to him, you find out this guy, mashallah, is a very high level scholar. He might be a hafiz of Quran, you know, he might be very Sufistic kind of thing.
Pious heart.
Yeah, and but because of the diversity in culture and practice, is, you know, our perception of somebody is completely different.
So the perception depends on your locality and the country.
Yeah.
So people in Turkey, their perception, or somebody in Morocco, their perception or their definition of what a Muslim or a pious Muslim looks like would be quite different to somebody from the subcontinent.
Definitely, yeah.
And they might look at the individuals who appear pious with the long beard and the right attire and think he's doing that for show.
And then if you go into all these other different countries as well, you know, if you look at...
I'll tell you something else. I actually came... some people from those backgrounds can consider somebody with a long beard or turban even extremist. That's as well. What we perceive to be a pious person. Yeah. And you mentioned... Yeah, they would consider them to be extremist or very rigid.
Okay, we're going to go to our first break, inshallah, and then we'll be break shortly after that. So the studio hotline is audible 142425200. If you'd like to partake the discussion of Islamic identity or connection with Islam, how we perceive Islam, then join us after this first break.
Online at www.imanfm.com and on our app, you're listening to Iman FM.
इल्म हासिल करना हर मुसलमान मर्द और औरत पर फर्ज है इसलिए इल्म का चिराग रोशन करने के लिए सहर अली अपनी अम्मी जी उम्मुस सहर के साथ प्रोग्राम पेश करती हैं इल्म की रोशनी सुनना ना भूलिएगा ओनली ऑन ईमान एफएम
Khan Solicitors, experienced criminal defence lawyers in defending your rights. We can assist you get the best possible outcome if you're involved in any criminal matters, including murder, drug offences, sexual offences including grooming, terrorism, fraud and money laundering. We can provide free advice and assistance 24/7 at the police station. Call us on 0114 258 3399 at 351 Abbeydale Road, Sheffield. Visit us at khansolicitors.com. Over 20 years experience in defending your rights.
अरे शमसुद्दीन भाई यहाँ कहाँ घूम रहे हैं
भैया रोडरम में कोई खाने का अच्छा जगह है
रोडरम में उम्दा और लजीज खानों का वाहिद मरकज चौधरीज ओरिएंट एक्सप्रेस
अरे भैया तो टाइम जाया ना करो जल्दी करो भूख लग रहा है
देर न लाओ आज ही आओ ते फायदा उठाओ
cater to impress चौधरीज ओरिएंट एक्सप्रेस प्रिंसेस स्ट्रीट रोडरम टेलीफोन 01709555527
हर कोई सज्जन मित्र बोले चौधरीज ओरिएंट दे पैगे रोले कुकड़ पाए ते गोश्त कढ़ाई आके खाओ होले होले
Aziz Catering, the award-winning caterers specialising in weddings, engagement, birthdays, business parties or any other special occasion from 30 to 5,000 people and delivered anywhere in the UK. All starters, main course and desserts freshly cooked to order, and you're welcome to taste before you order. Aziz Catering, 1 Whitefield Place, Bradford, BD8 9JB. Call 01274 488874. Aziz Catering, once tried, never forgotten.
At iLet4U, we know that being a landlord can be a frustrating business, but it doesn't have to be. iLet4U can find you tenants in under a week. iLet4U, specialist in selective licensed properties.
अगर आप मकान किराए पे लगाना चाहते हैं तो हमारी खिदमत हासिल करें और घर बैठे किराया पाएं। iLet4U पर हम आपके घर को अपना घर समझकर रेंट पे देते हैं।
Start finding tenants today by contacting iLet4U, 60 Page Hall Road, Sheffield, 0114 327 2020.
मुअज़्ज़म अली शहीद वेलफेयर ट्रस्ट के ज़ेरे एहतमाम जेएलएम में कायम अस्पताल में पिछले 18 सालों से इलाज मुआलजा मुस्तहिक अफराद को फी सबिलिल्लाह फराहम कर रहा है। गरीब खानदानों और यतीम बच्चों के लिए माली इमदाद दी जाती है।
With your help we can save lives, educate and help reduce poverty.
आप अपनी ज़कात, सदका व खैरात ट्रस्ट को देकर इस कार खैर में अपना हिस्सा डालें।
For more info call on 077 251 5561 or visit muslimtrust.org.uk.
إعلان عاجل لسائقي سيارات الأجرة وسيارات الأجرة الخاصة وسيارات هاكني كاريج. مستر كومبنسيتر يدفع 2000 جنيه كتعويض لطالبي التعويض لسيارات الأجرة، سيارات البرستيج وسيارات الدفع الرباعي بسبب الحوادث. التعويض مضمون بنسبة 100%. خدمتنا متوفرة طيلة 24 ساعة على 7 أيام. اتصل بنا الآن على الهاتف رقم 01143863386. التعويضات تنطبق على سيارات الأجرة فقط، كل ذلك وفقا للشروط والأحكام.
This is your local community station, Iman FM on 103.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi. Welcome back. You listen to Real Talk on Iman FM 103.1 FM. If you're listening online on Facebook or tuning up, then I hope everyone is doing well. And to our listeners on Dawn FM and on in Luton as well and Nottingham. Tonight, subject we're discussing is it's quite a broad topic. I think we're talking about Islamic identity or how they sort of perceive Islam or how they sort of see themselves connected to Islam. And we're not talking from a theological side, just for our listeners' sake. So don't go into what our belief is. If you're a Muslim, if your belief is based on that, we're talking about on a daily, practical sense, how you sort of perceive Islam. And from you can see, before we were discussing all these different ways we see people living themselves and how they identify as Muslims. And then the thing what we have now, I think, is with modernity, things are changing. We have digital sort of coming in. And thus changing the identity of people as well. People, how they identify themselves, kind of thing as well. And in terms of the information they get, how they look, how they appear. And, we're talking about people from different countries and cultures and all that, how they perceive somebody to be pious. I think you were saying how Indian subcontinent, when we see somebody with the long beard and with the turban and hat and with wearing a jubba, then we see them as somebody, as a pious person, as a knowledgeable person. Whereas in another part of the world, they might see them as an extremism, extreme kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you have sort of converse as well, because in terms of, there was this old notion where the people who sort of reverted or converted to Islam are kind of like they're like sort of forced to change their identity as well, in the sense the way they sort of dressed, maybe even their names
to be accepted.
Be accepted. But I think that kind of thing is changing in this day. They're keeping their identity, they're keeping their name, their sort of original name, or their clothes and the food what they eat as well. So they have their own identity as well. So from an outward appearance, you could meet a person, his name may be, I don't know, Michael something, and you might never think that this person is a Muslim, because the way they talk, the way they're dressed, it's only if you interchange Islamic sort of words that you might think this person is Muslim, or if they actually make an announcement that I am a Muslim.
Yeah, I mean, for convert brothers and sisters, it's very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, coming to a different religion and be accepted, and some do make those changes. In terms of clothes or food, and try to identify with this new religion or and mingle with other Muslims.
I think they'll find it quite dizzying, once they've actually taken the Shahada, if they haven't done enough research before. And then to find out how many sects there is and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's frowned upon, what's liked, etc., to find where they belong.
It could be extremely overwhelming for them as well, because it's quite really confusing. I mean, if somebody born a Muslim could be so confusing, and somebody coming into and being bombarded with all this information, and to find acceptance somewhere, because you've accepted Islam, but you just don't know where to fit. So it can be very, very difficult, and it can change. They can take on another identity, and in terms of clothes or food, etc.
Yeah, if somebody who's coming to Islam, if they look at the basic traditional Islam, how it started from the Ahl Sunnah, instead of looking a bit further down the line when the division started, it might be a little bit more helpful to them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what I wanted to say was interesting thing is, Islam is quite funny, because sometimes with the converts or rivers, sometimes they feel the pressure to sort of assimilate to a new culture, and which can be wrong. Sometimes it's forced upon them, which is wrong, and sometimes I think they get this notion that certain cultural practices is parcel of Islam, which is not the correct sort of notion, basically. And that's something that needs to be clarified, I think. Now, alhamdulillah, I think it is changing, because you find a lot of Muslims out there. But the other thing I want to say, if you look at media nowadays, if you're someone who's following people in mainstream or tabloid or news or something like that, you find so many people out there, and especially if you look at when they sort of portray Muslims, either from a very sort of famous public figure or to someone unknown, you find that they're very different. You have lots of converts out there or rivers out there. They have their own different identities, kind of thing, how they sort of perceive Islam. And then you have Muslims out there as well. So for instance, if you look at someone like Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, I mean, mashallah, I think the thing is, he is someone, he identifies himself someone like a sort of working class person who's risen up the sort of rank of civil service and into politics, and now he's become a mayor, and he does identify him as a Muslim, but sometimes Muslims feel that he's not doing enough. And then you have others who accuse him that he's doing too much for them, like a threat to the sort of the Western democracy.
That's the thing, isn't it? You can never win, because everything is subjective. So you got, like I said before, you got 100,000 Muslims out there. They're defining everybody differently. So for some people, Sadiq Khan is too extreme. For others, is not doing. It's too liberal. So you can't win. I mean. So it's very hard to please everybody out there. So I think one thing people need to do is step back and just reflect on things, and not just be so condemning sometimes or with their opinions.
And then you have people sort of, if you look at for instance politicians as well, there are Muslims out there, and then you have business people sometimes as well, and sometimes the thing or even sports person as well. So you have someone like Mo Farah. I think everyone knows that he's a Muslim. He's a Somali sort of immigrant. He's a Muslim person. Sometimes he gets accused of selling, like a sellout kind of thing. From what I've seen, I don't know why that is the case. But mashallah, if you look at him when he's doing, when he's running and when he's celebrating, it's clearly Islamic practices.
I mean, one thing I have come across is a couple of brothers. It's like his name as well, more. That's
exactly my point. If he used his name with the love, respect and honour that it's got, instead of just the first two letters, it might change a little bit.
I mean, for some brothers, it's just using Mo. It's quite disrespectful to the name Muhammad, which is the greatest name out in terms of any name a person can have. Muhammad, and so for them, it is a problem. I mean, But
so is word sort of problematic for some people, but by that what I mean, like, for instance,
they're using that name because that's such a special name, and abbreviating is they think this is disrespecting that name, disrespecting the Prophet ﷺ.
So what about the people, for instance, when they do something nasty, something really bad, and their names and their pictures are published on the tabloid papers, or doing something very horrific, and they have the name Muhammad. What's it called?
What kind of a message did it send?
What kind of message is it sending? Do you feel comfortable that they got their name Muhammad and associated with this kind of horrific crime that they've committed?
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, somebody who does that and has a name, like, they need to think as well. I mean, and so you can't just have a name and then your actions don't live up to it. So then that again is a problematic as well.
But I've not seen like people make a big deal. I've not heard from brothers or people that I know. I've not had any sort of conversation taking place where people feel outraged that this guy has done something and it's got the name Muhammad. For instance, you pick up any newspapers and this horrific thing that's been taken around, and when it's mentioned the name, the name Muhammad comes into it a lot. So why isn't there sort of a condemnation?
Because the thing is, that's the name, and that's the name. That's the name. But this guy is choosing to use the name more. He's abbreviating that name himself. They've been named, that person been named.
But has
Muhammad.
anybody asked him why he's choosing the name Mo? Why is he's calling himself Mo?
Let's get him on the show and we'll debate.
Should that be a thing?
No, they should be asked. I mean, you need to. I mean, unfortunately, but this is something that people do talk about, and the brothers have come across. I mean, this is something they pick up on. And that this fact that he just abbreviates the name, they find that it's just it's like a disrespect of the name.
How is that from a thing from an Islamic identity of Christ? I mean, what is name? Why is names has a massive sort of impact on the way we have the perception of individual. Because he might be a very practicing. Allah I don't know. But he might be a nice guy doing good things and practicing person as far as we're aware. It could be. We should have good opinion of somebody.
It could be, but the thing is, these brothers, the word comes up in conversation is the name of the Prophet ﷺ, and and so this is something for them. It's quite problematic, and for abbreviating a name to be cool or coming across, when that name is the most beloved name, Muhammad, the name of the greatest prophet, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. So for some people that's an issue.
That's quite
because it's an outward thing as well, isn't it? What you associate yourself with. Rather than using Muhammad and you to look cool or whatever, and you abbreviate to Mo.
But we don't know. We don't know. If he has that
or whatever his reason may be. But this is something that people have said. I mean, something that I've picked up on.
So that is something how people identify name as like attached like an Islamic identity, basically. Like, the name defines whether your
a name can be defining because
it's a defining.
Because you see a certain name and you automatically in your head it'll come up. This guy is Muslim, or this sister is Muslim.
So naming has, obviously
names make a big thing. Yeah, of course, it defines who you are. I mean, it can. As soon as you hear a name, a certain name, automatically start thinking certain things. Or this.
Okay. On a flip side, and this is something I read. I remember reading this in a book, and it's about it's regarding a particular country basically, and it's a thing as well. It's regarding the Turks. And if you ever see, they have the word Mehmet. And I've heard so many things about what the Turks. And I remember reading this interesting book as well, and it's mentioned why they use the word Mehmet rather than Muhammad, because we know Mehmet is a thing reference to Muhammad basically. And in that book, and I've also heard from a reliable source as well, they mention the reason why they would sort of use the word Mehmet, not Muhammad, is because they didn't want people to insult them or to say anything negative towards them, or they didn't really associate anything and the word Muhammad to be used with that.
That's right.
The Muhammad, the whole word itself. So that's why they, the Ottoman, the Turks, they felt using the word Mehmet is in a reference to Muhammad, but if somebody is saying negative, but they don't associate the Muhammad with that kind of thing. Allah Alim, like I said, this is the other sort of explanation, you know what I mean, from what I've heard. So we don't know exactly why somebody chooses a name that is, or changes their name for what reason.
Yeah, we don't know. We need to ask him. Somebody needs to go and ask him an interview. Maybe it should be you. You should go and ask him why did you change it from Muhammad to Mo. What was your reason behind it?
Important question to ask.
Was it because you were bullied or something and you changed it to Mo?
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, that's something I think on a serious note that you find that, you know, what we saw was, I remember after 9/11, there's a lot of reports out there, especially in somewhere like places like America and in certain other places where, especially people who felt somewhat inferior kind of thing, you know, at jobs or work or college or whatever, that they were changing the names from Muhammad to Mo, and, you know, from Jamal to you know, something like that. You know, I mean, the classical Islamic name.
There've been stereotypes.
Because they were getting bullied, bullied, or they felt that they were getting discriminated.
This is identifying feature here.
Yeah.
Because people, you know, like if you come across scholars from the subcontinent, they're very, you know, they say, you know, when you pronounce somebody's name, you have to pronounce it properly. And you can't change it or make it or use it as a nickname or abbreviate it. So this is something that we grew up with. And so this again is a defining thing.
It's a cultural thing, isn't it?
It could be a cultural thing. It could be, so it could be a cultural thing. But one of the things they say is it's a form of insulting the name.
And the memory.
And the memory of those people that had that name, like the Sabir, Rizwanullah Ajmain, or the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam Ajmain, or the prophets.
It's a valid point, but then again, the first argument what I said, what were the people who use those names, or when you give a child, when you give a child, that's what I mentioned. When you give a child, obviously you have good intention.
No, that's fine, but it was the parents that named that child. It wasn't him himself that named himself Muhammad. They were at birth when they were born without, they didn't have any sin, they didn't commit any sin at that time or any atrocities, and they were named Muhammad or Ahmad or Mustafa. It is only later on that they went down that road, but at that time the parents had good intention and they named that child or that girl Fatima or Aisha or whatever, but it wasn't themselves. So we need to ask Mo Farah. I mean, was it himself that changed it to Mo, or was it his parents? Was he actually
anybody Mo? You know, he doesn't have to be himself. But anyway, so that's, you know, it's worth pondering. Okay. The other thing I remember, what's it called? You know, what you find is it was interesting because I think it was like an interfaith dialogue a while ago, and what I've come across is sometimes that you come across people of Islamic faith, but there's for them what's important, how they define as a Muslim is different to sometimes to ourselves kind of thing. And one of the things I remember coming across certain people who feel that they have belief in their heart, and that's what defines them as a Muslim basically. So in terms of the outward practice or the outward ritual thing, they sort of, what I would say is
weak.
Pay less attention to it. I wouldn't call it weak, because sometimes it's how you think, you know what I mean? Because sometimes they're very strong in certain things, and it's a matter of just shifting that energy that's for that thing to something else.
It's like an interpretation of certain people. They think it's the inward beliefs. You know, you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, Risalat, but outwardly you don't have to show anything. And for them, this is what defines, for them, that's what Islam is.
I think that'd be the first. For me, that'd be the first thing, is your intention, niyat, and that comes from internal.
And you know, you find that, and then you have people who sort of see religion as very sort of superficial as well. You know, you come across.
It's like they're dressed up for show.
Yeah, you know, you find that somebody, you know, if somebody is not, like I said, we're not questioning a person's. We're not talking about people's internal faith in terms of, you know, we're not going to. I'm talking about like how sort of people perceive somebody as to be Muslim, how they perceive themselves.
Like we've discussed before. I mean, like wearing a certain cap or wearing certain color of clothes or a jubba. It's like a badge. So this is what makes you distinct, and this is what your definition of a Muslim is. Maybe wearing a certain type of, even actually a badge or
it's like
Mubarak.
It's
so for them that is a definition.
But that's very superficial. It's very superficial, isn't it? You know, you find that if somebody isn't wearing certain color, or if somebody isn't wearing jubba or salwar kameez, and if somebody isn't wearing a hat or a turban,
or a certain type of hat,
type of hat, you know, you have certain type of hat.
Carrying a tasbih in the hand, or even a stick as well.
You know, you find that if somebody's stick or a tasbih, you know, then they're not classed as like what you would say like 100% Muslim kind of thing, or a real Muslim. I hear that
you put a big question mark on this person just based on what you see.
It's strange how appearance can pass judgment on people. And we've got no right to do that.
That's my, as to them, and you've hit the nails, to the thing as well, in terms of what gives us the right to judge somebody.
Absolutely. I'll tell you something else. I read a book, very famous book, Tazkiratul Awliya, by Friduddin Attar Rahmatullah Alayh. A certain awliya did something which wouldn't be considered haram or anything like that, but it was just something that would put people off. So, because again, they didn't want any publicity, or they didn't want the egos anywhere affected. Maybe everybody starts saying, "Oh, look at that, Abdul Rahman is such an amazing person. He's a great awliya. He's managed to conquer his nafs." Just to take that attention away, or just to subdue the egos, they would do something that people would actually criticize them or condemn them, and this was just to make the nafs even stronger, and to not be focused on themselves or personal promotion or become egoistic in any way. So this was the ultimate way of purification of the heart and the nafs.
I think a lot of today's you could say it to a degree is finger pointing, and when we question somebody else's appearance or the strength of their faith, maybe we should be pointing that finger at ourselves, the perception we have of other people, and use it for reflection, how to make ourselves better.
Because when we talk about Islam, we talk about Islam being a very peace and tolerant religion. It's generally sort of used to sort of, when we're having a dialogue with people of other faith, we're trying to find some kind of sort of normality, some kind of uniformity kind of thing, some kind of common bond. But we forget that we have within ourselves sort of brothers and sisters who practice the religion in different ways, or who perceive the religious importance differently to us. They are our brothers and sisters as well, and because we alienate them, because we've created a barrier with them, because we don't want to have any kind of association with them, sometimes we disregard them to be even part of the body of Muslim, basically the ummah.
That's the worst thing anybody can do.
And that
is when you isolate people or a group, and you make them feel like that. And that then they're not part of the main body of the body of Muslims out there. That's the worst possible thing. I mean, it doesn't matter who he is. It should be all inclusive. You can't isolate people or be so judgmental that you drive people away. And
that's part of the problem.
This can have serious reprehension.
I'll pick up on Hashmi's point. That's exactly my point. Is if you have taken it upon yourself to become the judge and judge somebody and use other people to reinforce what you've said, so they don't either return to the masjid or to a Muslim gathering, then you've done a grave mistake, grave sin to yourself. It's really stupid that it doesn't fall under anything else apart from you're an idiot, mate. That's the bottom line, because you don't know what you've crashed down on yourself. It's not like a brick wall that's broken and it's fallen on you. It's the flames that's on the bricks that are gonna fall on you. You need to be worried about.
Just imagine it being something like in a mosque or something. You've been pointed out, or something. The way you dress, and how uncomfortable that person must feel. Would he ever want to go back to that mosque?
So being judgmental,
this could have serious repercussions.
Definitely,
absolutely. Being judgmental is not a good thing. So because we don't know what lies in somebody's heart.
Exactly. To our audience out there, listeners out there, you listen to Real Talk on Iman FM 103.1 FM, and we're discussing a very
touchy subject.
I touch the subject. We're trying to avoid.
It's a very personal and subjective subject here.
We're trying to avoid anything too controversial. We don't. We don't
nothing too controversial.
Okay, we're trying to find some kind of common ground, basically, and at the same time broaden our understanding of different people and just looking at things from a different perspective. Studio hotline is 0142425 That's Sheffield 2425 or you can send a message or WhatsApp on 07885599786. That's 07885599786. And if you are listening online on Facebook or whatever, then you are more than welcome to put any messages, comments, thoughts on that as well. The other thing is, I mean, there is this sort of, I think, when you sort of look at Islam, for instance, in UK or in I think UK generally, you find that people tend to sort of fall into different categories in terms of how you would define them. And there is one sort of group that, you come across people who sort of tend to see Islamic as a very spiritual sort of thing, from a very spiritual perspective, basically.
Yes.
They feel that it's all about sort of complete renouncing of the dunya kind of thing, no attachment to sort of materialistic thing, supposedly.
Yeah.
It's meant to be sort of very sort of incantation, basically. So very sort of repetition of zikr, what we would call zikr. Sort of collective sort of thing, collective way, living in a very sort of dressed or practices and mannerism in a very sort of what would in a very same way to others kind of within yourself. What would define a Sufistic way kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what I've come across, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm saying that people see that's how they define Islam is. That's how they think Islam should be. That Islam is a very spiritual thing, and it's it's sort of if you sort of internal if you purify sort of a heart kind of thing, then that will take care of everything. And when you talk to them, people, you find that they put so much emphasis on doing, for instance, what you would associate as a Sufistic practice, that they neglect some of the other sort of important aspect of the religious sort of obligated, like for instance studying Islamic academic knowledge subject.
I mean, if you look at the lives of Sufia, just mentioning the Tazkiratul Awliya, those great awliya, they were all great scholars.
Yeah.
And so one cannot. Knowledge is something very important in Islam. I mean, to become spiritually refined, you need to have knowledge. You can't just do zikr. You need to have knowledge as well, and you need to be doing other things as well. You can't, in terms of dunya. I mean, we need to obviously work towards akhirah.
Yeah.
But we have to live in this dunya, and the best way of showing yourself and giving dawah is leading a good life with akhlaq, good character, and that's the best way of giving dawah, a way of purifying yourself through zikr, but also at the same time living in this world, working, having a job, having a family, according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ.
Definitely. I mean, I came across like this famous saying of actually Ibn Khaldun, and I think this might, it says, blindly following ancient customs and tradition does not mean that the dead are alive, but the living are dead. So I'll repeat it again, and just food for thought before we go to the next break and news. Blindly following ancient customs and traditions does not mean that the dead are alive, but that the living are dead. So we'll be back after this break and news.
Your voice, your choice. You're listening to Iman FM.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम मेरे बहनों और भाइयों, मैं आपके लिए खूबसूरत प्रोग्राम लेकर आती हूं जिसका नाम है अकीदत के फूल विद शायदा रसूल। आप सुनते हैं हर मंडे को 11:30 से 1:30 बजे तक सिर्फ ईमान एफएम पर।
For reliable, professional, and quality immigration services, consulators, sponsorship visas, British citizenship, indefinite leave to remain applications, human rights, domestic violence, judicial reviews. You live your life. Let Consulators do the legal work for you. Call us on 0114-258-3399 or our dedicated 24-hour emergency helpline 07976-958-826 or visit www.consulators.com.
Advertisement is key to meet your business needs. Would you like to boost your business? Do you want to target your market? How can you effectively reach your customers quickly? Here at Iman FM, advertising is a fact. That's affordable, flexible, accessible, targetable. To find your perfect feasible advertisement and sponsorship package, contact Eman Media now on 0114 242 0551 or email info@emanfm.com.
Al Mustafa Welfare Trust works in remote communities in the developing world to provide free eye care and life-changing cataract operations. With your support, we can transform lives. Please donate what you can so we can continue our work by calling 0208 569 6444 and give people like Sadaf hope for the future. Thank you.
Introducing Rapchick, the halal modern Indian eatery at Meadowhall. Experience fresh ingredients and Indian spices into a fast and easy format. We offer tasters all day long because we believe our food does the talking. Do you know we have a no-fry policy? Try our halal Hyderabadi biryani chef special for just £3.95. Come and see what the fuss is all about. Enjoy authentic halal Indian food with a difference at Rapchick. Find us on Oasis Dining Quarter at Meadowhall, Sheffield.
लौंग वाली इलायची वाली कश्मीरी चाय पिलावांगे हींग वाला तड़का लाके पिशौरी गोश्त खिलावांगे
न्यारी हलीम दे नाल हरन कढ़ाई टेस्ट करावांगे शाही फलूदा लौरी चना चाट रीगल चौक दे दही पल्ले ते गोल गप्पे याद करावांगे
लौंग वाली इलायची वाली कश्मीरी चाय पिलावांगे
जीरे वाला तड़का लाके चने दी दाल खिलावांगे
लौंग वाली इलायची वाली कश्मीरी चाय पिलावांगे
Arooj restaurant now open to reserve your table ring 0114 275 7786 286 Attercliffe Road Sheffield S4 7WZ
एक बारी अरूज ते आओ तानु जाके दे अरूज ते पचावांगे
Yes, who is it?
Mr. Compensator. एक इंश्योरेंस कंपनी मिस्टर कॉम्पनसेटर को हराने की कोशिश में लगी हुई है लेकिन वो ये नहीं जानते मिस्टर कॉम्पनसेटर को हराना मुश्किल नहीं नामुमकिन है टैक्सी क्लेम ले आओ और 2000 ले जाओ मिस्टर कॉम्पनसेटर गोल्डन टैक्सी एपिडेल रोड S71FJ कॉल 0114 3863 386 conditions apply.
This is your local community station Iman FM on 103.1 FM.
You're listening to Iman FM. Time for the news.
Response to a gas attack earlier this week. Downing Street has described the operation as appropriate, but Jeremy Corbyn thinks there should have been discussions at the UN first. Lib Dem leader Tim Farron is with the government.
The strikes on Syria are an appropriate and proportionate response to President al-Assad's use of chemical weapons in direct contravention to the Geneva Convention, an act, a war crime, crime against humanity, and something that it was right that there was a response to.
A man's been arrested in connection with this afternoon's truck attack in Stockholm. However, he's not thought to be the main suspect, who's believed to still be at large. A beer lorry ploughed into crowds of shoppers and then a department store, killing 4 people and injuring around a dozen. Sweden's Prime Minister says it's pointing to terrorism. This witness describes what happened.
We were at the traffic lights and heard screams, then saw a truck coming at around 50 or 60 kilometers an hour that drove into statues and lampposts. Then there were loads of people on the ground.
A man who was spared jail for beating his wife with a cricket bat's been sentenced to 18 months in prison. The case of Mustafa Bashir was reviewed after the 33-year-old from Greater Manchester was found to have lied about starting a professional cricket contract. The European Commission has approved the planned takeover of Sky by 21st Fox, but the £11.7 billion deal still has to be sanctioned by UK authorities. In sports, Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers says signing a new 4-year contract at the Scottish Premiership champions is the right thing to do. It takes him up to 2021, and he says he's delighted. Meanwhile, Brighton are back on top of the Championship after a 2-1 away win at QPR. They're 2 points ahead of second place Newcastle and 12 clear of the playoff places. That's the latest. I'm Charlie Maggs.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You listen to Real Talk on Iman FM 103.1 FM. I'm your host Iqbal, and in the studio I've got Brother Mansoor and Hashmi, and we're discussing a very lively topic here, I think.
A very touchy topic.
Very touchy topic as well. We're talking about Islamic identity or Islamic how people perceive Islam is, or how they themselves identify themselves to be Muslims, or how they perceive others to be, whether or not they're Muslim,
or how they judge people.
And by the way, we're not talking about the core faith in itself. We're talking about
superficial judgment,
superficial kind of thing from outward appearance. And before we went, I think we're discussing, you find that certain people are more inclined towards sort of what we would define as a very spiritualistic kind of thing, very tasawwuf oriented. They think of Islam as that's how it is.
I mean, for some people, dressing in a certain way, certain type of juba, certain type of tasbih, and for them, and certain type of what you call a turban or something, or a cap, for them that's a Sufi.
Yeah, but that's more clique orientated, though, isn't it?
And
following a clique.
Or what you call it, doing certain zikr, and repetition of zikr, and for them, but is that? I mean, if you look at the classical sheikhs, classical Sufis, is that what they were like? I mean, were they just like dressing a certain way? Did they all have certain type of attire? Did they just do zikr and not go and seek knowledge from different sheikhs, and not just be spiritual, but in terms of fiqh and aqidah, have a vast knowledge as well?
Yeah, and the thing is that, from what I've come across, people who are sort of with that type of mind frame, what I've noticed is sometimes not necessarily going to sort of, as you mentioned, aqidah or fiqh, sometimes they lack other fardul ayn knowledge as well. For instance, I've come across people, they put a lot of emphasis on, for instance, learning a lot of this zikr, a lot of this du'as and salawat, which is good, absolutely fine and good. Nobody's in any way thinking that. But then when you sort of ask them, or when you listen to them, for instance, at their recitation of the Quran, you find that there is a massive flaw in their recitation of the Quran. They're not able to do it with the correct tajweed, and sometimes you ask brothers to, for instance, the guys outwardly they look very pious, they look very knowledgeable, they look like a big sheikh, and then when they're you ask them to lead salah, they'll say no brother, you lead salah, and then when you get down to it, you find out it's because they don't know a lot of the ahkam, the rulings, they can't recite the Quran properly, and when they do lead the salah, they're making massive mistakes in their recitations, which invalidates the prayers. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about everyone. I'm saying this just generally.
Absolutely. I mean, again, spirituality. Is not just doing zikr. It requires more. It requires knowledge. So you need to know the different aspects of knowledge.
That's what I was going to say. If you're going to step forward to lead, you have to know. Don't take a shot at it. I'll just have a go. Be sure.
And the thing is, sometimes they know that they might not be put in the position, so they don't think about it. But there will come a time where you might be put in a position because of your outward appearance, where you are asked to lead, and if your recitation is not good, or if you don't know the ahkam, the rulings, you know what I mean.
For some people, it's like being in the gang. They dress like this, or automatically I'm a Sufi now. And I've got all the right attire, or whatever, the badges are all there. And for them, that's what Sufism or spirituality is.
I think a lot of it depends on your personal self, because I've had, how could you say, you could say the chance. I've had the chance to lead prayer once or twice while I was studying with close friends. But while you're standing in front leading, you don't know who's coming behind. Next thing I knew, I lost count how many people there was. When I finished Salah, I turned around and I apologized to the brothers and said, forgive me if I've made a mistake. I was doing my salah with these two brothers. I didn't realize how many people were coming behind me. I would have much preferred somebody more knowledgeable or learned to step forward and take the place, but it was already in process.
I mean, a situation like that, it happens, and mashallah, as long as you sort of look, you know your flaws kind of thing, and then you work. That's what I'm talking. We all have flaws. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes, we know we have certain flaws. We're not putting our effort or energy to rectify that kind of thing. So
I mean, these people need to look at the classical sheikhs, and look at what their lives were like, and in terms of knowledge, and then try to work towards becoming a better person in terms of knowledge as well, and in spirituality, becoming a more complete Muslim.
I think maybe I totally agree, but I would advise them to go a little bit further back to where the Islam was, from the Ahl Sunnah. What did they do? The sheikhs and etc. They came a little bit after.
So with that would require. I mean, with that, in terms of what you're both saying, that requires a more of a serious academic study kind of thing, because you sort of, you find that when you open up a can of worm, there's so much in there basically. There's all the other things that he opens up as well. You have to study, history. You have to study all sorts as well to get a better understanding.
Then then this is really important, because then how much you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, how much you're lacking, and you were thinking a few moments ago, you were thinking you're the greatest sheikh on the planet.
Exactly. This is my point. It's very easy to call yourself Muslim, but do you actually know what it is? Because if you devise a test in a basic way, are you Muslim? Can you answer this question? Who are the Ahl Sunnah?
The thing is, a lot of people have this arrogance as well, because when they realize, this is realization as well, because they think, I know everything, and I'm a great spiritualist, and I do zikr, and I do this, and I go attend these mahfils, but when it comes to leading salat or some other thing, they don't know, and they need to step back, reflect, and move forward, and try to get, they need to work on this aspect, try to gain more knowledge, attend more classes, and because it's not just about this, it's a lot more. There's fiqh issues, there's aqeedah issues, there's so many other issues, and then you realize, I don't know anything, and so. And this is again very good to have this realization, and for that ego and overinflated ego.
Self-reflection.
You need that self-reflection.
Yeah, and that's why sometimes it's good to take the step back and look at everything and see, all
put things into perspective, and you realize you're nothing.
It'd be better if people, instead of looking at somebody else, see what's wrong with them and pointing that point, take a look in the mirror.
Okay. Studio hotline is 01142425200. And you can send a message on WhatsApp on 07888559986. That's 07888559986. If you're on Facebook or Twitter or Skype, then it's Iman FM 103. Or if you're on Facebook, and then it's Iman FM Radio. Or if you're listening on YouTube as well, I think Iman FM Live TV Live is on YouTube as well. You could put any messages, comments on that. There's another group of Muslims that I've come across. I mean, like I said, we're not segregating them here, as like a sort of partisanship. It's just how people perceive or how they identify themselves. We're not going to. I mean, I'm not talking about people's fundamental belief. You know what I mean? It's how they perceive themselves to be Muslims, or how they perceive others to be Muslims, in terms of in a superficial way kind of thing. And there's another group of Muslims that I think I've come across, and it's something that we should really think about. Is what I would say is like a sort of what I would say is this hipster Muslim or something like that, I don't know, or ghetto Muslim, or it's basically our youth or adults nowadays, living in this sort of very gang culture or street culture kind of thing. Who don't necessarily they might have Islamic knowledge on to a certain degree, but they don't necessarily they're completely detached from mosque. They're detached from the mainstream of Muslim communities and organizations and body kind of thing. The people what we define as causing havoc to society or whatever, kind of thing, or to the community.
Social deviants.
Social deviant, kind of thing. And mashallah, a lot of them are good people. It's just whatever situation they find themselves. They might like basic Islamic knowledge, but they if you ask them, right, are you Muslim, or if you ask them their name, for instance, they're Muslims, but they act and everything is contrary to Islamic practice, Islamic belief, Islamic rules and regulations. Yet, if anybody was to say anything to them like attack Islam, they would be first and foremost in terms of react. In terms of reacting, come to defense of. If anybody, like for instance, if anybody insulted anything or said anything derogatory towards Islam, they would react, because they see them as Muslim kind of thing, and you're attacking them, and they would be, for them kind of people, I think they are much more aggressive as well. And sometimes we see that, and that's a group we forget that, because from outward arena, you might think these guys are not practicing, he's not praying Salah. Some of them don't even never, probably, haven't prayed Salah for 10 years or something like that. Allahu Alim.
But can you see his heart? But can you see his heart?
They identify themselves as Muslim.
Yeah.
But for them, belief is, is what's in their heart kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even though they know they're not practicing the ritualistic aspect of it,
yeah,
they know that's their shortcoming. And the good thing about those kind of people, actually, if you speak to them, they will admit their shortcomings.
Yeah.
They will say, I'm not practicing, I'm a sinful person. They're not what I would say arrogant or hubris or hypocrite kind of thing. And if you look at you're seeing more and more people sort of within that group or within that sort of category, So we can't ostracize them. We can't say they are not Muslim Kenya.
It's not up to us.
Yeah. And and it goes to show that it's people's life experience. It's whatever direction their life has sort of taken them.
You don't know how much grief they're struggling with.
Whatever upbringing they've had, basically.
Yeah.
They're sort of fallen into that path, fallen into that group kind of thing.
Misguided.
But they still define themselves as Muslim in terms of as a Muslim, but in terms of how they identify or how they perceive Islam is different to others.
Again, you said this at the start, it's subjective, and for them, they do define themselves as Muslim, and sometimes quite aggressively, and for them that might be one of the main defining points, that they are Muslims. I mean, some of these brothers do actually, do come to Jummah though. Majority of them will actually come for Jummah Salat.
Yeah, no,
some, like there may be a few here and there that don't attend Jummah or might not have been to the mosque for 10 years.
If they've come to the Jummah or if they've come to the masjid, then that's got nothing to do with us. That's Allah saying, I've accepted your worship. We've got no business whatsoever pointing a finger, or anybody pointing a finger at X person and saying, what's he doing in the masjid? It's got nothing to do with us.
I think that's what puts them off as well. Sometimes I've come across one or two individuals, what they said is they've gone to pray and people start pointing towards them because of their appearance. They might have haircut which doesn't match to their perception of Islam.
And the thing is, because they might have not been to mosque for a long time, maybe even 10 years or even 20 years.
And it'll be the same reason.
And the thing is, when they do come into the mosque, somebody points it out to them. And then it puts them off.
Exactly
then
the same thing over
another 10 or 20 years. So this is, you should be welcoming and try to engage these people rather than putting them off or making them feel or stand out like a sore thumb.
Exactly.
So would you say that is...
If you're, let's say for argument's sake, if you're one of these people who's pointed finger at somebody because they've come to the masjid and then they haven't turned up for 10 years, take your sins, bruv. It's because of you he's not come.
They even get, I've even come across this actually, and they even get asked, why are you doing the mosque? Why are you doing? What are you doing in the mosque?
It's no business for you to ask the question.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
This is exactly what I mean.
Yeah, when mentality. If you're questioning somebody, this isn't your place. You should be out there enjoying and partying something.
Exactly. If X person's had a hard time or a bad life, and they've taken it upon themselves with some courage for X many years, they've not been to the mosque to make that step.
Why break a big barrier? This is a big barrier for them.
Why are you cutting his legs off and saying, you should not come here? That's a stupid thing.
Even in a joke, even if they said that in jokingly, this can have serious implications.
Definitely.
Put somebody off. It could, make them feel. Just put them off. Just belittle them, or make them think about what they've been doing, and so and it's just something that is not required.
It's emotionally sort of damaging to them.
Yeah, definitely.
And pointing somebody out, being judgmental, pointing them out, or like your past, this is your past.
That's my point exactly.
And shaming them. It's a way of shaming, isn't it?
Because X person has managed to advance. You want to put him or her, beg your pardon, back to 10 years ago or 15 years ago, because your mindset is that way twisted, not X person.
I study sociology as well, and there's something called self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell somebody so many times you're like this, automatically they start thinking, I am no good, I am a thug, I am this. So you should, whoever it may be, your children especially, you should be very encouraging.
It's like a brainwash.
Yeah, it's like you brainwashing, because so many people tell somebody they're like this, or you're no good, you're not clever enough, you're stupid, or you're never gonna you could do well in your exam. The child will think, I can't. There's no way I'm gonna pass it. They don't want to put any work in, and they will fail. So it's something, if you get that into your head that I am like this, then you will fulfill that. Whatever these people are saying, or what, you'll brainwash that person, and you destroy their motivation to move forward.
You've no right to affect somebody's energy like that. It's I think that's out of Islam, basically.
Yeah, that's quite dangerous, because it's like in the media side of the philosophy.
I mean, if you look at again, I'll go back to that book. I mean, look at the lives of these awliya. I mean, if you look what they were previously and what they ended up, I mean, some of these awliya were in the earlier lives, whether they're drunks or alcoholics, but later on they became the shining light of Islam, and the beacon of Islam, the radiant, and we talk about them today.
So I mean, on that, so you find that group, the marginalized group, because they've become, it's almost like ostracized by the mainstream, the so-called mainstream, the main body of Muslim, because they don't live up to the expectation of what defines a Muslim. I'm talking about from outward appearance, again, from a superficial side.
Yeah.
Because coming back to the question again,
listen, one thing I'm going to say, I'm
going
to come in. One thing, you would look at all these people out there, or you can use all these different words. Yeah, it's very superficial. Yeah, this is like a gang culture. I'm a Sufi. I'm so and so. I have this badge. You have that badge. We're different. Yeah. So it's a way of even isolating each other, or we not go to so and so's mosque, or he can't, or why is he doing in our mosque?
Defining lines.
It's a defining line, and these can be quite extreme, very extreme. This is where ostracizing other people and not mixing with them. I don't think this is a good way of living a healthy life. I don't think this is what Islam teaches you.
So do you think, we mentioned at the beginning of the show, how we see, if you look at it from a positive aspect, we said there's so many mosques out there, so many masajid out there, so many madrasas out there, Islamic organizations and businesses, and people are doing so well. And when we talk about, when we sort of break down the people, you see the massive sort of like a gap, or massive sort of almost like a repelling of each one from the other kind of thing. And also at times, so there are certain sort of, I would say, insidious, or I don't know, some tools like very sort of enmity or something like that. I mean, so rivalry, some jealousy, whatever you want to call it, between peoples. Sometimes it could be on purpose. Other time due to ignorance and whatever. You can see all this, how all that is segregating us more and more, kind of thing.
Definitely, it's widening the gap.
Yeah,
you can see it's a case of a grab for power. Yeah, that's what I can see.
I mean, rather than working together and moving forward positively and working for the betterment of the coming generation, collectively, we're just segregating each other.
Exactly.
We're just wasting our energy, and it's not doing anybody any favors. It's just a negative thing that's happening out there.
And you find a lot of lip service, like people say like Islam is a one body, one ummah, one unity kind of thing, but it's all lip service.
If that was true, would that imam actually go to another mosque and pray behind the imam? And that's the question. That's the question.
I mean, so you see all these different types of Muslims out there, and there's another group that I sort of want to talk about again, is that you find you come across people who sort of see Islam or identify them as a Muslim is someone who sort of is very sort of particular in terms of the practices. And what I mean by that, they are very from a sort of from a legalistic point of view. Like for instance, following things, what we would say Sharia, i.e. the legalistic. That they are, that you're basically doing everything accordingly to the jurisprudence book that's been set, and that's what it is. To take you with what I would say the fun, the peace, that loving aspect of religion kind of thing. They're very hard.
Yeah, I'm talking about this, the legalistic. I mean, I was actually thinking about this earlier on. I mean, I've come across people like this, very rigid, very very. They stick to it, and they stick to just this side of it. But they forget the spirituality.
And
if you think about the spirituality and working on your nafs and your inner self, and becoming a better, becoming more patient, especially when in life you have ups and downs.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're very rigid, and you're like a stick, or a twig which is dry.
No flexibility.
Just snap.
Yeah.
There will be no flexibility. But if you've been working on it, because everything's a balance, isn't it? You need to have this. You need to know your legal issues, but at the same time work on your spirituality as well. And then you're a more flexible, more dynamic person.
When Islam was being revealed and the Ahl Sunnah were in charge, you could say, did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Sahaba, the main Sahaba, did they concentrate on just one feature of Islam? Let's say for argument's sake, just spirituality or just the physical side, or did they engage in everything? Because what we're finding now is we're a few centuries down the line, and X person stood up and says, I'm a imam and I've written about the fiqh, etc., etc. Look at how it started. They didn't do that. It's the followers who have taken a distorted view and split it up, and people are attaching themselves to whichever they feel they are strong with. For example, the zikr camp, the fasting camp, the sadaqah camp, or the hype camp, you could say. Is because to me there is a camp that specifically is interested in hypes and likes, and they're not looking at Islam period, they're looking at how favourably they're looked at by others, which is
personal promotion.
It's nuts, that, bro.
Feeding the ego.
Astaghfirullah, that's madness.
I'm at such and such place now. I'm here. I've got this new juba on or this whatever.
I think because of Muslims are in such a healthy condition that they feel that they're comfortable to be within their clique, within their sort of gang, because
you've isolated.
There's lots of gangs out there.
You've isolated
gangs within gangs as well.
Like the Sheikh said, you've isolated yourself to a fish tank that's a closed area, but you can see out, and you don't have the intellectual capacity.
Or when you look into a fish tank, or when you look into a fish, or out where you want to be looking. But the thing is, everything's distorted.
Exactly, and you can't get yourself out because you can't increase your knowledge or expand your knowledge because you've got blinkers on from how you've been, or almost how you've inherited the knowledge from an ignorant person.
So the Muslims need to be more encompassing, and they need to be looking at things in a different perspective and reflecting on things, because you can't just, like we were just saying, you can't just be focused on one thing. It needs to be a balance, because for a Muslim you need to have a balance in life.
Exactly.
You can't be just focus on spirituality and forget the dunya.
You can have your weaknesses and strengths. And obviously it's natural for you to
try and balance these.
It's natural for you to monopolize or focus on your strengths, but it wouldn't be intelligent to focus on some of your weaknesses and bring them up to a reasonable level, because I can't understand how from something so pure has turned into do you like what I'm doing and do you want to join my gang?
I mean, if you look at some of these great sheikhs, the classical sheikhs like Sufyan Suri and other like Bishr al-Hafi, Rahmatullah alayhi ajma'in, these people were great spiritualists, but at the same time they were great scholars and masters of many sciences.
And I bet they didn't have blinkers on. No, this is my point. I bet they didn't have one-track mind with blinkers on. They were very articulate and looked at things from a very wide perspective, and that's how they were balanced. Because
definitely, we're coming to our last and final break. We're going to continue with our discussion on Islamic identity, perception of Islam, what defines a person as a Muslim, with Brother Hashimi and Mansoor after this final break. So join us after this.
Connecting you to your community. This is Iman FM.
The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth.
What were we and what have we become?
How are Muslims behaving?
What happened to education?
How do we integrate? All these and many more. Real problems, real situations. Join Amr and Iqbal for Real Talk every Friday 10 p.m. on Iman 103.1 FM.
In a world where accident claims are poorly managed and the referral fees paid are so low, and just when all hope is lost in the city of Sheffield, a hero emerges. A hero so powerful, one phone number is all you need. A hero named Mr. Compensator. For your referral fee of £2,000, call Mr. Compensator now on 0114 3863 386. Terms and conditions apply.
ओ दोस्ता बनी ठणी तक किथे तैयारियां नी
मैं जुलियन और जुमेरा
ओ दुबई जा रहे
नहीं जुमेरा स्पाइस रेस्टोरेंट
उथे क्या खास है
1976 दी देसी रवायती खाने जेड़े पाकिस्तान ने जाने माने शेफ बनाने ने खाई दा वतन याद अच्छा है लैम्ब चॉप्स चिकन बोटी लीवर टिक्का चिकन काबली मेन डिशां विच देसी स्टाइल हाउस स्पेशल कढ़ाइयां ते बाल्टी डिशां अच्छी तरह खाओ या डिलीवरी कराओ
जुमेरा स्पाइस रेस्टोरेंट 1 The Common Actors Sheffield S35 9WJ 01142 467 238
मैं जा रही हूँ द बाजार में
For a great happy shopping day, visit the bazaar. You will love the new bazaar.
जहाँ पर हर तरह के नए फैशन अच्छी कीमतों के साथ खुले हैं
Visit the bazaar at Syme Street, BD1 3RB, former Rawson Market.
Open every Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Also every Wednesday at Leeds Kirkgate Market.
The Bazaar, जहां आपको हर किस्म की चीज मिल सकती है.
The bazaar. Ooh yeah.
नाम मेरा नूरिन लतीफ है और पहचान कश्मीर ऑर्फन्स रिलीफ ट्रस्ट कोट मीरपुर है 2005 के होलनाक ज़लज़ले ने सब रिश्ते और सहारे छीन लिए फिर जिंदगी ने हर सवाल का जवाब पाया कोट से
कोट एजुकेशनल कॉम्प्लेक्स जड़ीकस मीरपुर के फेज 2 में हॉस्टल्स की तामीर जारी है आपका ताउन और सरपरस्ती की जरूरत है कश्मीर ऑर्फन्स रिलीफ ट्रस्ट 0300 123 774 court.org.uk
Your voice matters for your community. Here at Eman FM, we're looking for presenters. Would you like to step into the media industry? Are you interested in being a radio presenter? Can you talk about local issues? Do you want to serve your community? If the answer is yes, then contact Eman Media now on 0114 242 0551 or email info@emanfm.com.
ओ दोस्ता ओ मेरी स्पीडिंग टिकट है मैं क्या करा
तू खान सोलिसिटर्स की कॉल कर उना कोल स्पेशल टीम ही जेडी रोड ट्रैफिक केसेस रेड लाइटां नो इंश्योरेंस तो किनी के इमिग्रेशन फ्रॉड मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग पर्सनल इंजरी क्लेम्स सिविल लिटिगेशन तक कत्ल दे केस भी हल करने ने ते जे तुसा समझो कि पुलिस तुसे नाल कोई ज्यादती कीती है ते ओ कंपनसेशन भी दुआने ने ओ खान चढ़ा माड़ी जान
Khan Solicitors 351 Abbeydale Road Sheffield 0114 258 3399
Equipping the generation towards a cohesive society. This is Iman FM.
What do you want to talk about?
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You listen to Real Talk on Iman FM 103.1 FM, and I'm your host Iqbal, and in the studio I've got with the Mansoor and Hashmi. We're approaching the final section of the show. We're discussing the subject of different people who also have how they practice their Islam and how they perceive themselves in terms of what defines the Muslims. Sometimes it's a conscious of way of defining yourself. Other time, I think in most cases, from what I've seen, I think a lot of the time it's unconscious because sometimes you're not looking at things from outside of the box basically because sometimes you see things as they are, but you don't necessarily question the way how you perceive Islam. Is this the correct way? Is this the only way? Is this the right way? Is this the wrong way, kind of thing?
Or is it my way?
Or is it my way? You know?
Or the highway?
That's it. Stuff
the highway. And you find that I think one of the key thing is we have to accept that people identify or people practice how they choose to live as a Muslim in a very different way, and it's all based on their upbringing, their environment, their education, their family background, their culture, their heritage, how they perceive the world, how they see things, what path, what sort of objective they're taking in life, kind of thing. If somebody is sort of going to his academic study, they might sort of look at it in one way. If somebody is going, for instance, sports or something like that, they will, see themselves in a different way, kind of thing. If somebody's business, and then you have people who just not even thinking basically, and I think that's one of the crucial things. That's why I want to discuss. So we have to accept for people that people identify themselves as Muslims per se with regards to the faith in itself, but then how they live their life, how they practice their religion, it's going to differ just by default basically. And that's something we have to accept. Is everything is based on relative.
Are people as good as they say? Are people as good as they say or think?
Yeah. And you find that sometimes people who identify themselves or who see themselves as the carriers of Islam, they see themselves as representative of the body of Islam, may not necessarily live up to their standard.
I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created nobody the same. Everybody is different. So how can people even perceive things exactly the same? So we will have these differences of opinion, perception, and the way and outlook on life. So that is something that's normal.
Yeah.
But condemning people or being judgmental, that's something we need to refrain from.
There's another group of Muslims that we haven't solved. Like I said, right, they may not necessarily fall into a group. It might be a case of how we sort of put them in a group. Like, you have what I've seen is that some people who sort of go into certain kind of industries, it could be entertainment, which is halal I'm talking about, or halal according to some, maybe not to others, or it could be sports or something like that. And they are very passionate in terms of who they are. They're very vocal in terms of their identity as a Muslims. But they might not live up to other people's standard. They might be musicians, or they might be singers, or they might be a sports person. And they are very active. For instance, you come across, they're very active in terms of helping the people from a humanity sort of side. Charity works and that kind of thing. Yeah, they don't fall into your person's perception of somebody who's a real Muslim kind of thing. And that's where they start getting ostracized by some other mainstream groups. It could be one or more sort of mainstream groups, and that becomes problematic as well. You have people out there who see themselves as Muslims, but they're taking a different path, and everyone wants to serve the deen according to the way they can, basically. And everyone has, in terms of aspirations and talents, is very different. Path that people take is going to be different to other people, and that's just the way of life, basically. And I think that's something we have to accept and realize as well. A lot of the time we don't sort of think about this, and the reason why is quite interesting, because recently I was listening to one of the shuyukh, and he mentioned something, because a lot of the time, a lot of these diseases that we have within our heart is we think that we're trying to cure those diseases, or we're trying to cure those problems by doing certain things. But the key to all this, right, the first and foremost is knowledge, understanding that you have a problem. If you don't know that, what kind of problem, if you don't know the problem itself and what problem you have, how are you going to
remedy it? You can't. Exactly. You're just shooting in the dark.
Because if you look at it in terms of medicine, if you don't know what the disease is, if you don't diagnose it, how can you know what medication to use?
Exactly.
Otherwise, if you just use any random medication, it's not going to have any effect. It's actually going to be quite bad for you.
Yeah, and you come across, it's quite interesting, because one of the things that I hear a lot is because you have individuals might be suffering from serious illness, i.e., for instance, cancer.
Yep.
And they come across, they might go to seek advice from somebody who might say, I've come across this report that if you do this, then it's a cure for that, if you do take this. And the individual become convinced that if I keep taking this medication, I will get this cure. But they don't look at what the actual cancer itself is, what type it is, how did they get it, from an expert sort of point of view. They don't have an in-depth knowledge. The person who's giving the advice doesn't have in-depth knowledge of your problem, and is giving you a cure. And that's something it's worth pondering, basically. And you find that that's where we're lacking, because a lot of the time we have very little knowledge of others, of what they're doing, the actions, what they're doing. We lack knowledge on ourselves in terms of our understanding, and that's why it's worth taking a step back and looking at things through a broader perspective. And we need to sort of broaden our horizon, broaden our knowledge as well. And hopefully this is what's going to unite us. They say, like, the more understanding we have of each other's culture, of each other's practice. And it doesn't, sometimes we associate that with non-Muslims, but we forget that we need to associate that with Muslims as well.
We need to be looking for the unifying factors rather than the differences. We will have differences.
Because
there will be.
People just need to take a step back.
Avoid that. There will be differences. But we need to, like you said, we need to step back. We need to look at the unifying things that bring together us as groups together, and we need to move forward.
That's the bit where what I mean by step back is go back to where the Islam originated, the traditional Islam, when people were strong before the divides came, and they all had the same practices. I don't think there was this is better or that's better. They were told this is what you're doing, and that's what they did.
And unfortunately, some people love differences.
Astaghfirullah.
They look for, oh, this is a difference, and this is for them. This is like somebody has a different belief or practices. For them, they will be ostracized. And for them, it makes them feel better. Oh, we've got these differences. This is our group, and that's their group, and we are better. And there's all these kind of issues.
I can't remember when
like a gang culture.
To be or to follow a certain imam was a status symbol. I can't remember when that started, but before people start saying so and so, follow so and so imam or follow so and so sheikh. Well, all of these came from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's what we follow. I don't understand how people have run away with something that's not even theirs.
So these differences are actually used to separate
exactly
people and groups.
Just take a step. Everybody just needs to take a step back.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which imam you follow in terms of Al-Sunnah wal Jamaat. They're all correct.
That's the key point. Is we're all Muslim Ahl Sunnah. People just need to take a step back.
I think it's our psyche, it's our mentality, it's our attitude. You find that. I remember when the scholar mentioned this. He said something quite interesting, because you find that Muslims are becoming very on this idea of uniformity. Where they think that if you're not like me, or they want to make everyone like them, kind of thing. You know, whereas Islam is more about conformity, kind of thing. And you forget that. And the example they gave, right? For instance, if you look at, for instance, the Nazis, in the German, they try to sort of they follow this uniformity sort of ideology, basically.
Group polarization.
Where they wanted everyone to look the same, dress the same, talk the same, have the same kind of thing.
Polarize you.
Yeah, polarize the kind of thing. Where it was just this one way, and that's it, basically. There was no other way. And and I thought that was it was a very interesting sort of analogy that he was making, basically. And then he goes, if you look at Islam, it's meant to be more of a conformity. We have a certain rule that regulates that we all adhere to, but we're all different. In terms of the clothes we wear, in terms of our appearance, the superficial things, right? That shouldn't be the defining of us, of who we are, kind of thing. Our defining should be much greater, much more important aspect of what for instance, are we dealing with each other in fair, in justice, in equality, with compassion, with mercy? Those are the things that sort of harmonizes the society, that brings up a sprouting a sort of what's it called, what you would say, like a beautiful, nurturing society, kind of thing.
Definitely.
And we forget that, and it's just quite interesting, because it's something that we need to, I think, just ponder for a while, because we see that at times we get this filial piety or this filial deception, thinking we're in a very healthy condition. Like I said before, we have sometimes people think
that's the worst state to be in. When you think, oh, we're in a very healthy state, and then when something happens,
somebody pops your bubble, and then you don't know what to do.
You don't have a clue. Something happens in your life. You get a trial, and all of a sudden, that's taken away from you. For some people, it can get very difficult.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, sometimes you find yourself in this thing that was everything is doom and gloom. Just all just finished, basically, which is not the case.
There's always hope. There's always hope.
It's there, basically. We have, alhamdulillah, we have Islam and Muslim, however way you want to look at it, it's there in terms of to take it to a level where it can solve a lot of problems. It can,
with being very, being pessimistic, and all this doom and gloom, people need to reflect and look how lucky we are, especially in this country.
Yeah.
If you look at people in other countries like Syria or in certain parts of Africa or Asia or Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Afghanistan, and look at some people living there, their lives, how difficult they are in terms of money and finances. I mean, I personally have seen people sell eggs to come onto a bus, and they've got boiled eggs. And imagine how much money that person is making in a day. 100 rupees, 200 rupees. How many eggs is he going to sell? And how much is that money in English terms, in pounds? £1.50, £2.50 a day, and people got issues of food, water, a roof over their heads, so many other problems they're facing. But I've seen smiles on their faces. Whereas I've seen people here, they've got no issues of food, they can eat whatever they want, they've got a roof over their heads. I mean, you've got a social welfare system here, nobody's going to starve, but they're still extremely unhappy.
Ungrateful.
They've got cars, they probably have 2 or 3 cars parked outside. Or they've got other, they've got no problems at all in terms of money or whatever. They've got no issues of starvation, but they're still unhappy.
It's strange, isn't it, how people, or humans, I like to say humans because I'm from Mars, your guys can all just take it's how humans are so unsatisfied. It's unbelievable. It doesn't matter how much they have, they still want more. And I can't figure that.
I think,
just imagine it. Just put yourself that there's no water there, or and you haven't drunk for a couple of days, or you have to walk so many miles, like 10 miles, to get fill a bucket or something with water.
Sorry, I don't get your concept thing about not having water, because I don't drink every day, so you have to use something else.
But for the people who drink, but I'm just saying, here we've got a tap. 24/7, you can turn that tap around, and the water comes out, gushing out. You can drink as many glasses as you want, but there, people have issues dying of thirst. And we need to appreciate these things that we can eat any time, we can eat whatever we want. Alhamdulillah, shukr, alhamdulillah, and we can drink to our content. So we've got no issues of bare necessities. We need to be very thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and try to put ourselves into the position of those people and reflect on this. How lucky we are.
Definitely. And with that, I mean, I think that, as you mentioned, there are a lot of dangers out there as well. If you look at a lot of conflicts and a lot of issues that are taking place in certain part of the Muslim world, not all, but certain parts, especially where there's civil wars taking place, a lot of it is down to the people's perception of how they define to be Muslims. It's that's what it boils down to. You have different groups fighting against each other, and it's their definition of what Islam is. And sometimes it's the worst aspect of humanity that comes out from it. We're not saying everyone, but I'm saying the people, the perpetrators of these wars and conflicts are those ones. They become the sort of dominant one. They overtake, they sort of overrule the mainstream body, and it's the innocent people that end up suffering. And it's worth bearing in mind that if you don't resolve sometimes these trivial differences what we have, which we should be sort of embracing rather than sort of regressing kind of thing. We forget that, and our concerns should be learning the fundamentals and finding things that unite us, finding things that bonds us, kind of thing. And if you work towards that, then hopefully we can find ways of dealing with the problems we are facing within our society right now, because we are being attacked from left, right, middle, back, everywhere. From top to bottom, everything. And don't think that as an individual or a small group we can tackle a lot of these issues. We have to become collectively and sort of use our energy, use what we have, resources, to tackle a lot of these issues, resolve a lot of these issues and problems that we are facing within our community. And here in the West especially, if we're not working together, then we're going to have problems. Because
the reality is we're only strong when we are united as a group, or collectively. Otherwise, if you just like 2 here, 3 there, it's very easy.
It's fractured. It's already broken. The more we go back to the strength in the roots of Ahl Sunnah, the more it'll unify and unite the Muslims.
And the key thing to remember also is, from what I would say, in just generally speaking, you find that what everyone has or what everyone sort of identifies themselves, these are all part of a bigger jigsaw puzzle. rather than taking it one piece at a time, thinking this is all it is, we should be thinking, right, we should take that and put it into the whole puzzle, and when it's all together, then we'll have the complete picture, a bigger picture, the right picture, the correct picture, which is Islam, and that's what you find, because you'll come across people of different nationalities, different cultures, different languages, cultures, heritages, and all sorts. And it would just make it make things more beautiful. And we find that if we can learn to live people who differ to us within our faith, right, then we find it easier to hopefully live with people who are of different faith, hopefully, inshallah, as well.
Islam does mean peace and submission. Doesn't say divide and conquer. And
so we have to live by that principle. We can't, we can't do everything with lip service as well. And with our first and foremost, I think first and foremost, we have to discuss and recognize the problem itself, and then hopefully trying to come to some sort of amicable solution.
I mean, before I came, I had to look at a few definitions in regards to identity. A feature that makes you distinct, or a unique or identifying characteristic, something that defines someone. And then I was thinking about Islam and identity. And in terms of, if you look at Islam and identity, it transcends everything. It transcends your race, your color, the language you speak. It unites. It should be a unifying thing rather than segregating
and dividing.
Or dividing. So, Iqbal was mentioning, there are issues out there because of this identity crisis. And people have a certain identity, but they want to make other people accept this identity with compulsion. They want to force this identity upon them, which,
numbers don't make it right.
There is no compulsion.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how, but numbers don't make it right. Once you've got something a little bit wrong, you can have everybody behind you. It's still not going to make it right because it was wrong in the first place. You can't get support for something that's wrong, and I think that's part of the issue.
So people need to step back, need to reflect, and need to find unifying things that unite us rather than segregate us.
Yeah.
And those people out there, in those countries, need to think very hard on this. These actions that we're taking in terms of this identity, which we perceive to be the only identity and the correct identity, and everybody else that's opposed to this is a lesser Muslim or Ifa Muslim. They need to reflect on that seriously.
On a broader sort of perspective, if you look at it, there are gems from all different walks of life, basically, and if you embrace them, people have a lot to offer. Academias, spiritualists, people who are spiritual, people who are legalistic, people who have great emphasis on superficial, people who have sort of business mind oriented kind of thing. All these things, right? There are people who can serve, who can do a great service to this thing as a collectively, and it's worth pondering that. With that, we've come to the end of the show. I think hopefully it's giving people a food for thought. And the reason why I discussed that is because I think I was speaking to some of the young kids, to the madrasa kids, and I was saying it's the month of Rajab, the 7th Islamic month, and we are approaching what I would say the most controversial time period within the Islamic calendar.
Yeah,
we are approaching
the moon sighting.
The moon sighting, the Ramadan's coming in about a month's time.
All the doctors will be out.
Yeah, and you find it's that 2-3 months after Ramadan and the time after Ramadan that you find there's a mass. It opens up the division amongst us. So hopefully, we find something to not let that get to us, kind of thing.
So find something common to unite about.
Yeah.
We're all Ahl Sunnah, and everybody needs a wake-up call.
Because the key thing to remember is we all believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our Lord, as our Master, as our Creator, and we all believe that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah,
Allahu Akbar,
the best of creation, and if those two things doesn't unite us, then I don't know what will unite us. So with that, just thank you all for listening. Thank you, Brother Mansoor. Thank you, Brother Hashim, and inshallah we'll be back next time. And to all our listeners, wish you good health and prosperity and peace and love. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allah Hafiz.
The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth.
What were we and what have we become?
How are Muslims behaving?
What happened to education?
How do we integrate? All these and many more. Real problems, real situations. Join Amar and Iqbal for Real Talk every Friday 10 p.m. on Iman 103.1 FM.
Feyyuz de Muhammed, Jesus olmaz, Feyyuz de Muhammed.